They sealed this room and never spoke of it again. For over 2,000 years, it sat beneath one of the most visited monuments on Earth.
We're looking at something that hasn't been witnessed for almost 2,000 years.
Directly under the footsteps of millions of tourists, hidden in plain sight. When archaeologists finally broke through the wall in 2024, the first thing their lights hit was a human jaw, frozen open in a silent scream, fused into that position by centuries of sediment. Then they saw the rest. Scattered bones, soot-blackened walls, a child's skeleton curled against a larger body, as if reaching for protection in the final moment. Nobody in that trench spoke, because what they were looking at didn't match anything in the archaeological record.
The prominence of these monuments led many of the early explorers to consider the possibility that this might just be a city of the dead, an necropolis.
And it raised a question nobody had prepared an answer for. What actually happened in this room? Secrets beneath stone. Petra stops people cold. Its monuments rise from sheer cliff faces in the southern Jordan desert, carved directly out of living sandstone, not assembled from cut blocks like every other ancient city, but excavated from the rock itself, as if the stone were always waiting to become something. Millions of visitors travel here every year to stand in the narrow canyon called the Seek, and walk toward that first impossible glimpse of the treasury. 40 meters of columns and statues and ornate relief carvings glowing rose red in the morning light. And here is the part most of them never think about. The ground beneath their feet has never been excavated. The Nabateans built Petra, ancient Arab traders who crossed the desert with long camel caravans moving spices, incense, silk, and precious metals between Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. They controlled the routes, they controlled the water. They carved channels into the rock to redirect flash floods, built cisterns and ceramic conduits to capture and store rainwater, and engineered one of the most sophisticated water management systems in the ancient world, in one of the driest places on Earth. Without those systems, the city dies. With them, it thrived for centuries. Here is where it gets strange. For all that engineering precision, for all the careful planning that went into keeping 200,000 people alive in a desert, the Nabateans left almost no written records. We know what they built. We can study how they built it. But what they believed, how they treated their dead, what rituals they performed beneath those carved facades, almost none of that survived. It is one of archaeology's most persistent silences. The treasury, Al-Khaznieh in Arabic, sits at the end of the Sikku and dominates everything. Its facade is covered in columns and statues and ornate relief carvings that speak of a civilization deeply familiar with Greek and Roman artistic traditions while remaining distinctly its own. An enormous urn crowns the very top, and for generations, local legend insisted that urn contained the hidden wealth of a pharaoh. People believed it so, completely that Bedouin tribesmen once aimed their rifles at the stone and fired, year after year, hoping the impact would crack it open and release the gold they were certain was sealed inside. You can still see the pockmarks today. The urn never broke, the gold never came. Because there was no gold, there never was. When archaeologists surveyed the treasury's interior, they found no signs of treasure. The interior spaces were relatively simple. Whatever the Nabateans built here, it was not a vault. But scholars were never really asking the right question. The question was never what was inside the urn. The real question, the one nobody had properly answered, was what the treasury actually was. A royal tomb, a temple, a ceremonial space, something that changed purpose over centuries. And beneath that question, a deeper one. What lay beneath it? The treasury is not freestanding. It is carved into the cliff, and that cliff continues downward beneath the surface. The forecourt, the open plaza directly in front of the entrance, had never been excavated. Not once in the entire modern history of Petra's archaeological study. For years, local stories quietly suggested that something might lie there. Archaeologists noticed small anomalies in the rock and soil, but without permission to dig, no one could be certain. Every day, thousands of tourists pass through the forecourt. Footsteps, camera clicks, children running between the columns, and beneath all of it, something had been waiting, sealed, silent, for 2,000 years. The forbidden excavation. Jordan's government protects Petra the way you protect something irreplaceable, with extraordinary caution and a deep awareness of how much is at stake. Petra draws tourists from across the globe. Those tourists support an enormous portion of Jordan's economy. Families throughout the region depend on the steady flow of visitors. Any damage to the treasury, a single crack in its fragile sandstone, facade, a vibration that travels through the wrong vein of rock, would be catastrophic, not just for archaeology, for people's livelihoods. Because of that, researchers spent years asking for permission to excavate the forecourt. Many years, and for years, the answer was always the same. No, Jordan's Department of Antiquities wasn't being unreasonable. Even a small vibration from digging could threaten the stone. Beyond the physical danger, there was something else holding everyone back. Local traditions passed down through generations, suggesting that certain Nabatean spaces had been intentionally sealed long ago, not to protect treasure, not simply as burial sites, but as protected areas meant to remain closed. Whether those traditions were historical memory or cultural belief, they added a layer of gravity to the question that no one took lightly. Then, in 2024, something changed. After months of careful negotiation, Jordan's Department of Antiquities agreed to allow a small, tightly controlled excavation of the forecourt. The conditions were among the strictest ever placed on any project in Petra's history. This was research, not a treasure hunt, and that distinction was made explicit from the beginning. If anyone behaved recklessly, the project would stop immediately. Trenches would be narrow and reversible, every layer of soil documented before anything moved, every stone mapped. Project leaders described the process as surgery, not excavation. Several organizations joined forces. The Petra Development and Tourism Region Authority oversaw visitor safety and daily operations. The Petra National Trust represented the interests of local communities. The American Center of Research brought deep regional knowledge. The University of St. Andrews contributed advanced scanning and dating technology. Each group had a defined role. Constant reporting was required. And this is the part nobody expected. Even after all of that planning, all of that negotiation, all of that careful preparation, the team made a unanimous decision before a single shovel touched the ground. They would not start by digging. They would start by looking. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when archaeologists find something that changes history, the answer is, it starts with a machine rolling quietly across a dusty plaza and a scientist staring at a screen. Subscribe to this channel and stay with us, because that machine is about to find something nobody was ready for. The hidden signals. The instruments arrived before the shovels. The first tool was ground-penetrating radar, a device that sends short pulses of energy into the soil and records what bounces back. When those pulses hit something underground, stone, compacted earth, or empty space, they return a different signal. A computer translates those reflections into shifting patterns of color on a screen. The team moved the radar slowly across the forecourt. Every pass was recorded, every path tracked. Inside a small field tent, scientists watched the monitor as underground layers appeared in bands of color. Bright sections suggested dense rock. Darker shapes hinted at gaps, or something softer beneath the surface. But radar was only the beginning. Next came resistivity testing. Small probes were inserted into the soil and connected by cables. A gentle electrical current passed through the ground between the sensors. Different materials conduct electricity differently. A computer translated those differences into visual patterns, and slowly, hidden shapes beneath the surface began to emerge. After that, magnetometry, a device that records tiny disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field. When the Nabateans cut into rock or constructed walls, they changed that natural magnetic balance slightly. The team moved the instrument across the same area in careful lines, collecting readings at every step. Here's where it gets strange. For a time, the scans appeared to show nothing. The data coming back looked like natural rock formation. Irregular, unremarkable, the kind of underground landscape you'd expect beneath 2,000 years of foot traffic in an ancient city. Scientists watched the screen. The lines shifted. Nothing remarkable resolved, and then a shape appeared. A rectangular outline began to form beneath the forecourt. Clean edges, right angles. Natural rock formations don't create straight lines like that. Natural erosion doesn't produce right angles. When the team compared results from all three instruments, radar, resistivity, magnetometry, the same outline appeared each time. The structure lay deeper than any modern pathway. Its edges were too precise for erosion, too consistent across 3 different scanning methods to be a false reading. Nobody moved for a moment. The researchers gave it a simple label in their records: Anomaly C. The instruments couldn't show what was inside, couldn't tell the team whether the space was empty or filled, a room or a tomb or something, with no name in any existing archaeological literature. But they made one thing absolutely clear. Something intentional was buried beneath the forecourt of the most famous monument in Petra, and the team was about to open it. The descent into the ground. Using the scan measurements, the team marked the exact excavation zone on the forecourt surface. Jordan's Department of Antiquities reviewed the final plan and gave approval. Barriers went up around the site, keeping visitors at a safe distance while tourism in Petra continued without interruption. Then the work began, slowly. The excavation started with the removal of the upper soil layer, not with heavy equipment, but with small hand tools. Even minor vibration could travel through the sandstone and reach the treasury's facade. So, the team avoided force at every stage. They gently scraped the surface and placed each scoop of soil into labeled containers. Assistants carried those containers to a nearby screening station, where the earth passed through fine mesh as specialists searched for pottery fragments, charcoal, or any trace of past activity. Once the upper layer cleared, the soil beneath proved harder. Centuries of pressure had compressed it into dense, tightly packed ground. The team switched to even smaller tools: brushes, wooden picks, narrow scraping blades. Progress was slow, deliberately, carefully slow. Before removing each layer, the team recorded its depth and location. The American Center of Research supervised the documentation. Photographs and detailed notes captured every stage. Representatives from the Petra National Trust observed to confirm preservation rules were being followed. Specialists from the University of St. Andrews monitored the surrounding rock with sensitive instruments that could detect tiny movements in the stone. If any crack appeared, work would stop immediately. Every few centimeters, excavation paused for measurement, and then something appeared that did not belong to natural rock. A straight edge emerged beneath the packed soil, sharp, clean, carved long ago by human hands. The team brushed the surrounding earth away carefully. Slowly, the shape became clear, the top of a stone step. As they continued, more steps appeared below it. Smooth walls bordered the staircase, shaped deliberately rather than formed by erosion. Nobody spoke for a long moment, because no one knew what lay at the bottom, or what those hidden steps had been built to protect. Order in death. The team stepped carefully through the narrow opening and into the darkness beyond. Dr. Pierce Paul Kriesman, the lead researcher from the American Center of Research, entered first. He raised his lamp, waited, let his eyes adjust to the space before saying anything, before moving, before disturbing the 2,000-year-old air with anything as disruptive as a word. The walls rose straight and even. The ceiling was intact. The space did not look natural. It looked built, carved with intention by skilled hands working to a deliberate plan. He did not move forward for a long moment. The American Center of Research began directing the first visual survey of the chamber, while the University of St. Andrews set up recording equipment to capture images and measurements of every corner. Only then did the team raise their lights fully and look around. What they saw made everyone go still, completely still. A skeleton lay on a low stone platform against the wall. The skull rested at the top. The spine ran straight down. The arms were positioned close to the body. The legs stretched forward in a posture of deliberate calm. No bones were scattered. No limbs were twisted out of place. The burial looked planned, arranged with a care that was unmistakable even after 2,000 years. Someone had placed this person here with intention. A few steps away, another skeleton in the same posture. Then another. The count increased slowly. At least 12 individuals rested in the chamber. Some bones were larger and thicker. Adults, others were much smaller. Possibly children. None showed signs of careless burial. Several niches held single skeletons placed alone. In other spots, 2 bodies lay beside each other, arranged with what could only be called purpose. The team stood in that chamber for a long time before anyone reached for a camera. Because this was not just a discovery, it was a room that someone had prepared with extraordinary care. 12 people arranged, honored, sealed away beneath the most powerful monument in their capital city. The objects found with the remains were simple: A ceramic vessel pressed against the ribs of one skeleton, positioned as if the person had been holding it at the final moment. Not rich in material value, their placement was what mattered, and the chamber itself was pristine. Floods had never reached this space. Looters had never entered. Thick sediment had sealed everything in position across the centuries, preserving the arrangement exactly as it had been left. This level of preservation stopped the researchers cold in a different way, not from shock, but from the weight of what they were standing inside. But here is what really stopped the team cold. During their survey of the chamber, they noticed something beyond the far wall, a narrow sealed space, smaller than the first. The stones fitted tightly into the opening, deliberately, firmly, with the same care that had sealed the staircase above. Whatever was behind that wall had been put there by the same hands that arranged the 12 bodies in the room where the team now stood. And the smell of it, even through the sealed stone, was different. What they found. The team turned toward the sealed space beyond the first chamber. Workers removed the blocking stones slowly, placing each piece aside in numbered order. When the final barrier shifted, trapped air rushed out. The smell that followed was heavier, sharper, older than anything they had encountered in the first chamber. Several team members stepped back, adjusted their masks. They allowed fresh air to move into the dark space before entering. Dr. Kriesman stepped inside first, raised his lamp, and stopped. The walls were covered in black soot marks. The stone surface was burned in places, dark streaks reaching toward the ceiling, like something had been on fire in here for a long time. He stood in the entrance and did not move forward, did not speak. The rest of the team waited behind him. Then he stepped aside so the lights could reach the floor. Bodies lay scattered across the ground. That is the only word for it, scattered. Unlike the first chamber, these skeletons did not rest in calm positions. Bones twisted and overlapped. Skulls leaned at strange angles. Some skeletons lay face down, others lay partly on, top of each other, limbs crossing, positions that no ceremony would produce. Nothing about this room was planned. The team counted the remains carefully. Broken ribs on several skeletons, cracked skulls. The fractures did not match a simple structural collapse. The patterns were inconsistent, occurring in different locations on different bodies. Some bones showed signs of strong force, joints pulled out of normal alignment. One skeleton had its jaw stretched open and fixed in that position, fused by centuries of sediment. It had been open when that person died. Near one corner, a small skeleton rested against a larger one. The smaller bones had curled toward the larger frame, toward it, not away. Sediment had fused them together across the centuries. The position suggested that the two had been close, very close, at the moment of death. A child and an adult, together at the end. Nobody wrote that down right away. The floor held several ceramic containers unlike anything found in the first chamber. Thick residue clung to their inner surfaces. Early analysis detected iron-rich traces in the substance. Researchers collected samples immediately for further testing. Iron-rich residue in sealed ceramic vessels in a room full of violently scattered remains and soot-blackened walls. No writing covered the walls. No carved words explained what had happened here. No decorative design marked the surfaces, only soot, stone, and bone. The American Center of Research documented every skeleton with photographs and detailed measurements. The University of St. Andrews prepared to run DNA testing and isotope analysis on the remains, tests that can reveal where people came from, what they ate throughout their lives, and how they died. Jordan's Department of Antiquities maintained strict oversight during every step. The Petra Development and Tourism Region Authority limited public access to protect both the monument and the ongoing investigation. The team stood in the second chamber with their lamps raised and looked back through the opening at the first, at the neatly arranged skeletons, the carefully placed vessels, the orderly niches, the calm, the dignity, and then looked down at what surrounded them now. One chamber, planned, honored, sealed with intention. The dead arranged with extraordinary care by people who understood what ceremony meant. The other chamber, chaos, force, soot, and death, with no dignity at all. Bodies in positions that no ritual produces. A room that someone had sealed with the same firm stones, and then walked away from, and never spoken of again. Two sealed rooms. One monument. and a wall between them that someone had built specifically to keep one story hidden behind the other. 2 stories, 1 monument. Here is what the evidence already forces us to ask. The Nabateans built the treasury as a statement about power, about permanence, about whatever it was they believed happened after death. The chambers beneath it were not accidental. They were deliberate. Part of an architectural intention that went far deeper than the facade anyone has been photographing for a century. The first chamber reflects a burial tradition of extraordinary care. Whoever was placed there was arranged, honored, sealed away beneath the most important monument in the Nabatean capital. Whether this was a royal burial, a priestly one, or something we have no category for yet. The treatment of the dead reflects a community that understood death as sacred, something that required ceremony, something worth carving a room for beneath the treasury itself. The second chamber is something else entirely. The soot on the walls suggests fire, but fire in a sealed underground chamber could mean many things. Ritual burning, a funerary practice involving smoke or flame, or something far darker, a massacre, a sacrifice, an episode of violence that someone was desperate to conceal. The scattered, overlapping positions of the bodies suggest the people in that room did not die peacefully, and they were not arranged with care afterward. The broken bones suggest force applied to living people. The small body curled against the larger one suggests not ritual, but the last instinct of someone trying to protect a child in the final moments. And this is the part nobody expected when they started this excavation. The 2 chambers were connected, not just physically, but by the same hands. The same people who sealed the orderly burials in the first chamber also sealed the chaos in the second. The same stones were fitted into place over both openings. Whether those who did the sealing were responsible for what happened in the second room, witnesses to it, architects of it, or simply the survivors left behind to close the door and never speak of it again, no one yet knows. The sealed wall between the 2 spaces now carries an entirely different kind of meaning. It was not just a physical barrier, it was a choice, a decision made by someone standing in the second chamber, looking at the scattered dead and the soot-blackened walls, and deciding that what had happened here should never be seen again, that it should be placed beneath the most powerful monument in the city, behind the calm dignity of ordered burial, buried under 2,000 years of sediment and silence. It worked. For 2,000 years, it worked perfectly. Until 2024, when a team of archaeologists in masks and gloves removed the final blocking stone and the trapped air came rushing out. What Petra means now. Petra still stands as one of the great wonders of the ancient world. Its facades glow at sunrise. The 6 still funnels visitors toward that first impossible glimpse of the treasury. Still takes the breath away, still stops people in their tracks, still does exactly what it was designed to do 2,000 years ago. But the story of Petra is no longer only a story about beauty and engineering and a desert civilization that controlled the trade routes of the ancient world. It is now a story about what gets hidden, what gets sealed, what gets placed beneath the most visible structure in an ancient capital and left there in the dark for someone else, centuries later, with different tools and very different questions, to finally find. The questions that remain are significant, and the answers, when they come, will matter far beyond archaeology. Who were the 12 individuals in the first chamber? Were they Nabatean royalty, priests, or members of some group we have no name for yet? What happened in the second chamber? And when, relative to the orderly burials next door? Were the 2 events separated by years, by decades, or by something that happened in a single terrible night? What was in those ceramic vessels, and why were they left behind with people who died without dignity in a room that someone then sealed and walked away from? These are not small questions. They are questions about power, about violence, about the lengths civilizations go to in order to preserve a particular version of their own story. Every ancient culture has its sealed rooms, the episodes it chose to hide, the truths it decided future generations did not need to know. Petra has now given us access to one of those rooms. Researchers from the American Center of Research and the University of St. Andrews are working through the evidence now. DNA testing can potentially identify familial relationships between the individuals in both chambers, whether any of the 12 were related to each other or to the people in the second room. Isotope analysis can reveal where those individuals grew up, what they ate throughout their lives, and whether they were native to the Petra region or came from somewhere else. Those findings could reframe the entire Nabatean burial tradition in ways that textbooks have not yet caught up to. The residue analysis from the ceramic vessels may prove equally important. If the iron-rich traces turn out to be blood, human or animal, it would raise profound questions about what rituals were being performed in that sealed room before the door was closed for the last time. If the residue turns out to be wine, oil, or plant material, it might point towards ceremonial practices that the Nabateans left almost no other record of anywhere. What we learn from that second chamber will tell us as much about the Nabateans as it will about ourselves, about what we choose to bury and what we choose to remember. And somewhere above all of it, right now, tourists are walking across the forecourt in the morning light, lifting their cameras, taking photographs of the treasury facade, standing exactly where the staircase descends, stepping, without knowing it, over the place where a child's bones are still fused to the larger skeleton that tried to shelter them, preserved in that. Positioned for 2,000 years, waiting for someone to finally open the door. What do you think this discovery tells us about the people who built Petra and what they felt compelled to hide? Drop your answer in the comments. If this investigation held your attention, hit the thumbs up. It helps more than you know. And subscribe now, because we are going deeper into the world's sealed rooms and hidden discoveries every week. We will see you in the next one.